Hey everybody, welcome to the Lionheart Institute podcast. I'm your host, Richard Thomas.
And I'm Tiffany Thomas.
And we want to welcome you to a great show. Today we're going to be talking about relationships and the wisdom of forgiveness. Now there's a lot of reasons why we should forgive people, and there's a lot of reasons why we seek forgiveness in our own life. But one of the most important reasons is for ourselves. It's a selfish reason, right?
Right.
To cleanse our soul, to make our mind clear, and to help us move forward in this world. And today we were really talking about the value of how we purge our soul and how we stay focused and how we stay disciplined and on track.
Right.
And one of the things that ended up coming up was the fact of how important it is to be aware that people that we love and we value aren't always going to be with us, right? One of the passions that I had my whole life was the game of football. Mm-hmm. And still today, I'll wake up early on a Sunday morning before anybody in the house is awake, and I'll try to watch my few minutes of alone time with the game and reminisce about how fun it was to play, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I love about it is how many life lessons the game can really teach you. And I know for you, for instance, you were an athlete, but you never played the game of football, which the Lord knows you're too pretty to have played. But there's a lot of women playing the game right now, and they do a phenomenal job.
To be fair, they wanted me to play football.
I can imagine.
I was asked to play football in junior high at Sequoia Junior High.
Well,
they wanted me on the football team, and I remember thinking, I don't want to be around a bunch of smelly boys.
We actually had two female players at Sequoia, where I went to school as well. Yeah. And they were great athletes, and they played hard. We had a great time. And I still, every once in a while, will chat with them about how fun it was to play with them. So I am not one of those guys that think that women shouldn't play football. It's just a very unique sport, right?
Very true.
And in that sport, we had a saying, keep your damn head on a swivel. Mm-hmm. Now, in general, I was able to get away with breaking a lot of rules. Okay,
right.
It's kind of my personality. It's kind of what I do. I enjoy living on the fringes, and if I can push a boundary to get a shortcut, that's what I'm going to do. It's all about being efficient in life, and I want to be effective and efficient as I can be. But we had this saying, keep your head on a swivel, and I was able to cheat it a little bit. And so by the time I got to college, which I went to the University of Washington, I had a coach begin to teach me the game of football in a new way. Now, I had a great high school coach, head coaches, and then a great running back coach, Kirk Phelps, who helped me tremendously. But this was not a lesson that I had to learn. All morning long, before we went out to practice, the saying was this: keep your head on a swivel. Mm-hmm. And what that meant is that we were supposed to be aware of everything going on around us. So they have a little route where you fake like you're going to go to the flat, right? And then you're supposed to come back over the most dangerous place in the world, which is the middle of the field, right in the area where the linebackers like to break bones, okay? And every once in a while, a strong safety, even a free safety, will come down and blindside you if you're not careful. Well, I thought, you know what? I know this. I've been running routes my whole life, and I got a skill set that's nobody can compare with this, right? So I think I can cheat it and get a little quicker step.
Sure.
And so I go to kind of fake it to the flat, and instead of really doing my job and faking it and drawing him out of position, I just kind of hustle back over the middle and throw my hand up to get the ball thrown to me. Well, sure enough, the quarterback threw me the ball. And as he threw me the ball, the linebacker had not been deceived at all by me thinking that I was going to the flat. I had not kept my head on a swivel. And my head started flying through the air, swiveling as my helmet got knocked off. Okay. Now, it's a funny story, and if I could remember it, it probably would be even funnier. But I remember all I woke up with was my mouthpiece still in my mouth.
Oh, my goodness.
The piece that connected to my helmet had snapped in half, and I was biting down on my mouthpiece so hard that they were holding my helmet over the top of me saying, take this kid to get a new mouthpiece. And that's kind of, my first memory of a guy by the name of Dave Hoffman, which is one of the best linebackers in Husky history. Well, none to say least, I learned the concept, keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah,
right?
I bet.
Today we had the wonderful opportunity to talk about a concept called Memento mori.
Yeah.
Right? And it's kind of that keep your head on a swivel in real day life, right?
Yeah.
It means be aware that death is always with you. And we got some fairly heartbreaking news today. And we didn't know how serious it is. We still don't know the extent of it completely.
Right.
But we do know that what we heard broke our hearts.
Yeah.
And every day it's with us. With COVID-19 infecting the world. Today we hear of thousands of deaths. We know that it's in the area of 200,000,
Over 210 right now.
which is amazing. I mean, it's a heartbreaking number. If you think about that, that is the Rose Bowl filled twice with people. It's heartbreaking, you know. And what we thought was originally maybe just an extreme cold or an extreme flu has now begun to put us on watch, where everyone has got to be a little bit cautious and a little bit aware of what's going on in the world around us. I call it memento mori for us in reality, right?
Right.
Keep your head on a swivel. Now, that's not supposed to mean that we live in depression or anxiety and every day you're picking your nails and you're worried and you're overly cautious. I want you to be cautious. I want you to be aware. You should wash your hands 4 or 5 times a day. You shouldn't touch your face after touching objects. But at the same time, we shouldn't live in fear and we shouldn't live in anxiety. What the concept of memento mori should do is it should awaken within us an appreciation for the thing called life.
Yeah.
A value for the beauty of the lives that are around us and our own life. And we should begin to maximize the moment. We should begin to make the most of every single day. Yeah. If we have loose ends, we should tie them up. If we have things that we've left incomplete, we should complete them.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the beautiful person, I hope you'll share from your heart that there was some things done, some things undone at one point in your relationship.
Right.
For me, one of the most beautiful relationships I've had my whole life is a relationship with my sister.
Yeah.
But there's things that are undone and uncompleted, and it's probably, when it comes to relationships, the thing that grieves me the most of any relationship that I have, right?
Yeah.
When Christy got sick, thank God we were in a great place. Right? We didn't have really loose ends. We had a lot to accomplish in life still. We had a lot of dreams. We had a lot of things that we wanted to do. But as far as peace between us, there were no real loose ends.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference in how passionate you can be about a relationship, about living your life, about pursuing your dreams. Right? If you don't have a will and you know that you're going to pass away, one of the things that you do is you finish that will.
Right.
Now, that's not being focused on death. That's focusing on life. It's focusing on the lives that'll be left after you.
Yeah.
It's focusing on the legacy that you're going to leave. And they say all the time, what are the best trees? Well, the best trees are planted by old men who will never sit under them.
Yeah.
And so it's about understanding, yes, we're not going to be here forever. Death could come at any moment. But living life with a passion and a zeal and a fire to get done today what we can get done, because it's all that we have. So we were talking, and unfortunately I got a text out of nowhere that said, oh my God.
Right.
And that oh my God sent, I'm texting you 10 times before you can get a response back to me. Baby, tell me what happened. Tell me what's going on, right? So share with the Lionheart Institute audience, just from your heart, the news that you got. Obviously, we'd ask you, if you're watching this of late, please be in prayer.
Yeah.
Positive thoughts wherever you come from that way. But what did you hear, and how are you doing?
Yeah, so I got this text from one of my brothers. It was a group text. I have 7 siblings, as we've talked about. I've got 6 brothers, and so one of them sent a group text to all of his siblings that my mom this afternoon had been air-vac'd to a hospital in Spokane, that she had collapsed, was unconscious. The paramedics came. They thought that she may have had a heart attack. But she was breathing. She was just unconscious. They air-vac'd her to a larger hospital in Spokane, and that was all we knew.
Yeah.
Like, there was no answers, no explanation, no nothing. And I remember that moment because, like, my heart just stopped dead, because that's not news you expect to hear. I mean, the last thing that you expect to hear, you know, on just your Saturday afternoon, running errands, doing what you need to do. And then you get this text, and of course the unknown is just devastating.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I literally felt like I was sitting there waiting for a text message that my mom had not made it.
Right.
And, you know, and all I could think to myself is, how do I tell my 9-year-old that he'd lost his grandmother, who is one of his favorite people in the whole world,
Yeah,
you know? so it was really, really hard. And I thought, my mom is too young. Like,
Yeah, she
she's
is.
just too young, you know. Being in your early 60s is way too young to not make it in this world. And so I call the hospital, try to get some answers. Nobody can tell me anything. They're just saying,
Right.
we're going to run a bunch of tests. We'll get back to you. And, as the day progresses, we still really haven't gotten much answers of anything,
Right.
as to what is wrong with her. We know that she is obviously still alive and conscious
Thank God.
to a certain extent. But still there's no answers, as to what her condition is. And for a moment, I'm like fighting through my tears and thinking to myself how precious life is.
Yeah.
Like, how quickly it can be gone, and how unprepared we are for it because we don't expect it.
Right.
Like, and as you said, we always know it's there, but we never think about the moment where it takes us.
And I think that it's so important what you're saying right now, because if we're able to deal with that in a way that is almost productive rather than counterproductive, wherein you can wake up in the morning and think, this is a day that matters.
Yeah.
And it could be my last,
Right.
We talk about explaining to Logan, which is our 9-year-old now. Well, our family tragically experienced something very similar.
Right.
When my 9-year-old at the time, Peyton, had to call on Christy collapsing.
Right.
Which for you who may not know is my first wife, and she had a brain aneurysm, and it's so sudden, it's out of nowhere.
Right.
And you think you have forever.
You do, right.
And you take forever for granted.
Yeah.
And, when it comes to your mom, we're somewhat aware that we don't have forever with her.
Right.
But she is so young. She's a gift to our family. She loves her grandkids. She loves her daughters and her sons, and she wants to make sure everything's taken care of. And she grieves with those who grieve in our family and rejoices with those who rejoice. And just a beautiful soul. And here we are facing the uncertainty.
Right. Well, and it made me really just put relationships into perspective, and not just our
So true.
relationships, our family relationships, but I really just thought about the relationships around the world, around the United States. And, as you said earlier, with COVID, there has been such a loss of life in 2020. And the millions of people that have had to deal with that loss of their loved ones. Not a handful. We may have lost 200,000, but the people still left to deal with that death, that grief, is in the millions.
And it's a different kind of a death. Just like they say
Right.
giving birth right now is a different kind of giving birth.
Right.
Because anything to do with hospitals and with the COVID fear and so
Right.
forth, they're alone.
Yeah. A
So
lot of
people are facing
dying
death alone. They're
Yeah.
facing new birth alone, which is terrifying in and of itself.
It is.
For
sure.
we've had the privilege. I've had the privilege of being in with 6 kids now. Right, that's a beautiful thing. I've been in for half of them at least.
Right.
But I just had a coworker have a baby, and it's so exciting. But it's in a different perspective because you
Yeah.
can't be there now, so you're
Right.
holding your breath. We're holding our breath over your mom.
Right, because we
You know?
can't be there
Yeah,
because
there
of
would-
all the restrictions. So it's like, I would love to drive there,
Right.
and I know you would have been like, let's get in the car, let's go.
Of course.
But what do? So I can't be there to support my mom, and I can't be there by her side to encourage her, to help her get through whatever it is she's going through. And that is really tough.
It is tough. And it makes you put a priority, and I love what you said earlier. It makes you put a stamp of a priority on every single relationship.
Right.
They matter so much more when you say goodbye and you say
Yeah.
hello in the morning.
Right.
When you have that opportunity to realize how valuable the resource of this relationship is. And it really is a resource because it fuels our life. It gives us passion. It gives us purpose. It gives us a why and a vision far beyond any goals or, any
Right.
trophies that we collect or riches or diamonds or jewels or gold. When it's all over, that's all that matters is our relationships.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it kind of made me think about that, not just ours, like I said, but everybody's. And how many people lost family members with unresolved issues, right? Unforgiveness in these relationships.
So
that
good.
now they're left in that aftermath of guilt, of remorse, of these emotions that they will never be able to have a conversation with somebody that they love that should have happened.
That brokenness that can never
Yes.
be healed. Yeah.
You know, I think back with my mom, and, you know, growing up, my mother was my best friend. Like,
Wow.
she was my best friend in the whole wide world. Like, I loved her more than anything. And we grew up having just a really close relationships. We were more like friends versus mom and daughter. You know, but as I got older, our relationship got a little rocky,
Yeah.
you know?
Which is common.
Yes.
Most relationships go through that up and down.
Yeah. You know, one thing I have learned as a parent is that we don't always make the right choices, right?
So good.
I mean, parenting is difficult. I mean, you are responsible for the lives of children, of people that you're raising to become adults. And
So good, yeah.
it's so easy to judge our parents, right, on their mistakes and how their mistakes affected our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, and let's be real, as parents, the decisions we make for our children will affect them.
Right.
Whether it's positive or negatively, they will still impact them. And I think as we get older, we sometimes start to judge our parents based on their choices. And don't get me wrong, sometimes they're bad choices and they have negative impacts in our lives. But when I became a parent,
Yeah.
it just kind of hit me like, holy cow. Like, I am responsible for a life, a human life. And it's not easy.
No, I think you shared it the other day. What was your number one priority of the day? To make sure these children survive.
To make sure they're still living at the end of the day. I mean, forget clean house, forget laundry and baskets. Like, my children are alive. Like, that is a win for me.
That was the priority, right?
Like, I mean, some days it's like that, you know? And I think that it's easy to forget how hard it is being parents.
Yeah. I often think about when it comes to that. My parents were phenomenal parents. I just did a tribute to them.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And it was just something that was flowing out of my head. And it was really kind of started a selfish thing, you know. I was thinking, I talk about how in the post, how I had to grow up as a translator.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was really putting the post to really just say we're telling stories now in our interview series. And thank you for tuning in. And I encourage you to tune into our interview series. They're powerful and people are having their lives affected. But I really started thinking about how beautiful my parents were, how wonderful they were, and I tried to put that in some kind of context. But when you think about it, a lot of people will get bitter at their parents.
Yeah.
But they're only giving us what they know.
Yeah.
So really what I should, if I could, I'd call my grandparents, but I remember crying at both of their deaths. You know, wishing I'd have had more time with them. Remember the first beer I ever drank, I was probably about Logan's age when my grandfather passed away. And that was the first beer I ever had on the side of a curb right in front of our house. And I didn't know how to express my emotions. And so my mom came by and sat with me, and I had a Coors Light. You know? And we lived in the hood. So I don't think I meant to pour it out, but the beer was so nasty I didn't want to finish it. So I poured it out for my granddaddy. But, you know, you think about it. They only give us what they know.
Right.
And what they're giving us, good, bad, or indifferent, if they make the right decisions or they make the wrong decisions, they're giving what they have to give.
Yeah.
And so once you understand that, the root of bitterness doesn't form in the same perspective.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you come to a place, I know, you know, my parents divorced when I was very little. You know, I was still a toddler.
Yeah.
And so I grew up pretty much most of my life without my father. Had some stepdads, but I never had that real father figure in my life. And so you go through all these different emotions of blaming one parent or another, or, you know, the stories that you grew up hearing and just wondering. And then,
how could you leave me to develop daddy issues?
Right. Oh goodness, yeah, story of my life, but. But years later, I got to know my dad, and, you know, I realized at one point it's easy to become angry with both of my parents, you know, for their decisions and the effect that they had on my siblings and I. And one day I had to really step back, and I thought to myself, they were really young, having kids. They got married like right out of high school, first year in college, and they were still kids.
Wow.
Like, they were still learning life, and now all of a sudden they've got 3 small children, and they're still kids.
Yeah.
And
babies raising babies.
Right, and so I had to sit back and really think that, well, maybe some of their decisions were selfish. They didn't know any better.
It's powerful.
And they made the decisions that they thought were best. And I had to respect the fact and understand that they were what they were. Mm-hmm. That it's not a matter of this person take responsibility or that person taking responsibility or blame games. It was an understanding that they were both wrong. Mm-hmm. And they were both right.
It's good perspective.
There's my mom's perspective, there's my dad's, and there's the truth in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, and you kind of have to put the pieces together, and it's not about
and
one
then you have
against
to
the
interpret
other.
that for yourself.
Yeah, you really do.
Right.
You have to try to find peace in that, because the truth is we'll never know all the answers. Mm-hmm. We will... you hear this all the time. So many kids grow up and are just blaming their parents for so many things. They're angry. And don't get me wrong, there's times where it's justifiable.
Of course.
Wretched
things have been done.
Right.
By inhumane humans.
Right. Right. But you have to get to a place where you have to find forgiveness.
Yeah, amen.
Because if you don't find forgiveness, you will not be able to live and
move on. I think that's
on.
so good. Sometimes people think that forgiveness is for the person that you're forgiving.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit, because it's not.
Yeah. I used to think for a really long time, and if you were able to watch our video last week, from victim to victorious, you would have heard a little bit more about my story. And I think, suffering the abuse that I went through, forgiveness was very difficult for me.
Sure.
There was a lot of people that I had to forgive. Mm-hmm. Right. But I realized that at first I thought, if I forgive them, then that means I'm saying what they did was okay.
You're justifying.
I'm giving them an excuse, right? For their behavior. I'm excusing their behavior. So for years I didn't want to forgive anybody, because I thought to myself, they don't deserve it. Why do they deserve to be forgiven when they have destroyed my life? Right? They've caused me pain and trauma and hurt that goes, and scars that I still bear today. So why would I forgive them?
With not a sorry.
Right.
No phone call telling you they were wrong.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. 100%. So it's like, why would I forgive them? They don't deserve it. And I had to come to the reality and the grips that forgiveness was for me.
Yeah.
Forgiveness set me free.
Right.
Because until you forgive somebody, you were bound in chains to the pain and the trauma they caused you.
Right. You're linked to that moment forever.
It will always be with you. Mm-hmm. You will never break free from it, because the chains will always be on you. And it's not about excusing their behavior. It's not about justifying it. It's about freeing yourself from the bondage of those pain and those scars that you bear from that. And it took me a really long time to be able to understand that and accept that this was about me.
I think what you're on to is so powerful, and we live in a world, some of you may as well, where we the predominant theory of our, or philosophy of our life, theology of our life is the right term, would be based on a Christian perspective of the world. Right. And so we talk to so many Christians who say you need to forgive.
Yeah.
And when you forgive, they have this whole role model, don't bring it up again, and don't hold them accountable for it.
True.
It's almost this mindset that you're just giving them a hall pass. Right. And I don't mind, because most of the time a person's life that I forgive has nothing to do with my daily affairs, right? For me to tell someone to apologize to me and me say, I forgive you, is easy, right?
Yeah.
But I once was literally attacked because of my Christian philosophy, theology, that someone came to me and said, hey, this person did XYZ in their past. You need to find it in your heart to forgive them. I said, actually, I don't even feel like I have this XYZ was an abuse. I said, hey, I wasn't the one that was offended. I easily forgive.
Right.
I don't have any judgments against them. Mm-hmm. I'm not angry at them.
Right.
And then they turned around and asked me to let my daughter spend the night. And I looked at them like, are you out of your damn mind?
Right.
So forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting.
No, not at all.
So what I mean by that is this. If a dog bites me, I might be able to forgive it, but I'm never going to let it just hang out next to my face licking me.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying that a person is a dog, right?
No,
That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is if I have a steak and I put that steak in front of a Rottweiler,
right.
I anticipate that the Rottweiler is going to eat the steak.
Right.
Okay. That doesn't mean that I don't forgive the dog. I might not even blame the dog. I might say to myself, gosh, that was foolish of me to do that. However, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you put all cautions to the wind and say, hey, I'm going to make myself vulnerable to you completely. You said something about how you restored your relationship with your mom. That was absolutely brilliant. It was powerful. Because I was getting ready to ask you that, and then you led into that. How do you start the process of not only forgiving, but healing that relationship when you've been wronged?
So I will tell you, and again, this is different for every person. So there's no one size fits all here, people. There's not. But I can tell you that sometimes you need to remove yourself from a situation that is unhealthy. And for me, I moved myself and my 3-month-old son at the time literally across the country to get away from...
To create separation.
Right, because I needed to find peace. I needed to be able to clear my head.
Right.
And I couldn't do that being surrounded by the pain that was surrounding me being close to family members that I was having conflict with.
I think it's important also when you look about separating yourself, it's also the other person's tendency to try to define how that forgiveness plays itself out.
Very true.
I think that's a very human trait.
Yeah.
In the sense, if I ask you forgiveness, manipulation can begin almost immediately. There's this, I don't know if it's a new term, an old term, but it's definitely a term being thrown out called gaslighting, right? Where now everybody's trying, yes, I said, will you forgive me? You said yes, but now the beginning of a new dynamic of understanding how that event happened, how the wound even opened.
Right.
All of these processes can begin. And so when you say create separation, that's one of the wisest things that you can do so that you can redefine the relationship.
Right.
Right? So walk through that.
So I moved almost 3,000 miles, literally, like when I say across the country, moved across the country. I had lived in Georgia for almost 3 years. And so I moved from Washington to Georgia with a 3-month-old. And
Which isn't super unusual, right? You were born in North Carolina. So
right.
You had roots in the South.
But most of my family predominantly were all in Washington, friends where I mostly grew up here. This was pretty much most of the life that I knew. But I just was not in a good place. And I was like, I need to be able to take myself out of this, remove myself from this negative situation, because I knew I was not going to be able to think clearly. And one of the most difficult things is when you are in pain or you are suffering, you are not rational in your thinking.
That's good.
And that is something that's really important that I would like you to understand. So you make decisions that aren't always the best decisions ultimately when you're in those moments.
Yeah. And we may share down below, it doesn't really serve the purpose of this talk, but there's what's called 5 stages of grief, right?
Yeah.
And you may be trapped in one of those stages to where you're not really advancing to the place where you ultimately want to be, which is acceptance.
Yes.
Okay. And we'll put that in the description, so click down there to kind of find that. But it's so important when you say creating separations, you have clarity of thought, being aware of the moment, being aware of your situation, and having that ability to separate, to reestablish what you truly believe, what you truly think. This is, on a side note, one of the most valuable things that a person that wants to be a high performance individual can do is have radical change in their life.
Yeah.
Okay? You are not going to become a new person with small changes in your life.
Right.
If you want to become a majorly different person. You want to have a revolution in your life, in your lifestyle, the way that you treat other people, the way that other people treat you, the way that you visualize and goal set. You need a radical change in your life. And one of the things that you did is you pursued that radical change just by changing your geographical location, which is powerful.
Right. And, if you don't have the means or capability to do that, you don't have to move across the country like I did, but you can tell whoever you're in conflict with, hey, I need some space.
Good.
I need you to respect that I need a moment. Whether it's a month, a year, 2 years, however long it takes you to process your thoughts and emotions and the pain that you are in, to be able to have a clear mindset. That way, when you are ready, you can go to this person and have rational conversations because you are in a better place. So whether you would literally physically distance yourself or you just tell this person, I need some space, and that's okay.
So let's say that a person is in that situation.
Yeah.
One of the practical things that you can do is set for yourself times when you'll respond to their text messages.
Yeah, for sure.
So you set, I'll respond to this person A, B, C, D, or E, or F between the hours of 3 and 6.
Yeah.
No other responses.
Right.
Because it's important that you have rules to your relationships, particularly when you're working through forgiveness.
So we like to refer to those as boundaries.
Okay. Walk.
So boundaries are one of the most important things that you can learn. So please, please learn about boundaries. Okay? It will save your life. It will save your relationships. I promise you. Boundaries are so important to healthy relationships. And I say that because my mother and I were not in a good place at the time. And once I learned to process where I was and my feelings on the issues that we were having, I realized that I can forgive her, right? Like I said, you grow up, you start to realize that you may not agree with your parents' decisions, but you can start to maybe understand some of them.
Good, yeah.
You don't justify them, but you can understand where they were when they made them and why they made them.
And understanding is half the battle.
Right.
Knowledge and understanding, that wisdom of perspective is half the battle, right?
So when you get to that place where you can understand that, then you can start to...
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But that's something deeper than assumption, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's not just an assumption. You have to really dig. You have to truly seek to understand.
Okay, good.
Okay? It's not I think this is what happened. This is you need to know.
Yeah.
And look, we're not always going to have the answers to everything because we're dealing with people who, everybody is flawed. Everybody has some type of brokenness in their lives. And when I look back and I think about my own parents' brokenness in their life and their lives, and that affected their decisions, the truth is we're all really broken at some point in our lives, and the decisions we make are reflected of that.
Yeah.
And so you have to step outside your anger and your pain to see that they were suffering too, that they were dealing with their own pain and their own trauma, and they did the best they could in those moments.
I think that is so powerful. Because what it does is it breaks the cycle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What we don't realize is if we don't ever take a step back and say, what offended me about that?
Right.
What was wrong about that? Why do I think they were so evil for doing that? And then we come to a place of forgiveness and healing. But we have to be reflective on that. Or I just do to my child what was done to me because I never learned. See, it's a process. Forgiveness is humility.
Yeah.
It's humbling yourself to say, hey, you know what? That deeply hurt me, but I'm going to forgive them and I'm going to seek a higher form of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you say, okay, what was it about the action that your mom did against you? And, it could be anything that offended you, that hurt you, that cut you, that caused you to feel that brokenness. And then what you can do when you start to forgive and create those boundaries, now you can say, okay, what's a better way?
Yeah.
If I was in the situation that my mom was, what would I do differently, and how could I do it differently, and why would I do it differently? And that is a process of being aware that our lives are very finite.
Yeah.
They're not, at least this element or our phase of this life is not eternal. right? And so because of that, we're going to transition in flesh. We want to do everything that we possibly can do right in our relationships, but without reflecting that this is temporary. We can't do that because we think we have all the answers.
Right.
And we think that that person should have had the answers when we ourselves don't seek them out.
Well, it's like you hear people say, I'm not going to be like my mom when I grow up.
Sure not.
I'm not going to be like my dad when I grow
Yeah.
up. And then they grow up and they become them.
Exactly like them.
Exactly like them. Everything that they hated about them, they
Right.
became.
Right.
And you ask yourself, well, how did that happen, right? Because if you don't like those things, then why would you allow them to happen? And it's because you never sought to understand why your parents did what they did.
Right.
And so until you can understand that and understand the pain that it caused you, you will become that.
Right. An apple tree grows apples.
Yes.
An orange tree grows oranges, right? What we don't understand is that that seed is growing in us because, and we're incubating it with bitterness and anger and hate and jealousy and rage and blind just foolishness.
Yeah.
Because we don't take the first step, which is to dig the seed back up and say, hey, I forgive you.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the biggest steps is after, like I said, it took me almost 3 years before I came back to Washington. And I remember throughout the time, my mom and I, we started having more and more conversations over the phone. You know, it got to a point where I would take a few trips. Logan and I would get on a plane and we'd fly back here, you know, for a week. And I started visiting a little bit more and interacting with them. And
that courting phase again.
Right, it really is. And also, too, because now I'm a mom, right? Yeah. So my instinct is to protect my child.
Yeah.
And because I have pain and hurt from my mother, the last thing I want is that to go on to my son. You know, I do not want that pain to be on him from her. And, you know, so I had to also think about that in respective of the mom relationship and then a grandma relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
And at some point, I had to learn that her relationship with my son was not the relationship she had with me.
That's so good.
And we often forget that sometimes, and we hold that anger and bitterness towards our parents, and that and it affects the relationship of them to be able to be grandparents to our children. And so I had to step back and not carry that into there, and allow my son to build a relationship with his grandma. I
think I can recall, and if you do, maybe you can share it. But I remember us sitting and talking one day, and the sense of anxiety you seemed to feel the very first time. I think it was a movie, but it might have been something different. When you left Logan with your mom to babysat, and it's not like your mom was she wasn't the source of your abuse, right? In the sense of physical abuse,
right?
So you had no real fear that way, and anxiety that way. Just the impact that she had on your life and so forth. You were just such anxiety that you felt leaving, and that's how you knew one of the elements of forgiveness that you needed to continue to work through it. Right.
It's not you forgive and everything goes away.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a process. It's a journey. Forgiveness is truly a journey, and there's different steps to forgiveness of how you fold that out, but they're baby steps. Okay, you have to take baby steps, and it's that moment to where I realized, okay, if I came back, I needed to create boundaries. Okay, I needed to figure out what could I not handle with my mother, and what could I continue to encourage and nurture that was healthy. And I remember the conversation I had with my mom on the phone before I moved back. And literally on the phone, I said to her, I said, Mom, I said, if you want me to come back home, I need you to understand something. I said, there's going to be boundaries, and you're not going to like them.
That's not an easy conversation to have, is it?
No, it wasn't. And I had to tell her that. I had to say, there's going to be boundaries. You're probably not going to like them all, but I need you to respect them.
Yeah.
Because if you want a relationship with me and you want a relationship with your grandson, I need to know that you love us enough to respect these boundaries.
It's powerful. It's a grown woman speaking to a grown woman right there. Yeah.
Right. Because you have to create that. It's your safety. It's your security. It's your guarantee you will not end up back in the same place.
Yeah, that's good.
Because what happens with relationships, if you don't have healthy boundaries or boundaries at all, you go back to what you know.
Yeah.
You revert back to the unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we do for whatever crazy reason. We just revert back to the negative.
It's the first law of thermodynamics, right? Anything left to itself will deteriorate.
Yeah,
if we left our studio and we packed it up for a year and came back, there would be dust on the cameras. The fibers would crackle and break, right? We wouldn't be able to turn them back on probably, because anything left to itself would deteriorate. It'll go back to a broken status.
Yeah.
So I love what you're saying about creating those healthy boundaries, because what that is it's just maintenance of your system, right? It's just dusting.
Yeah.
It's just making sure, hey, we don't go back down this road again. Let's have a talk. Yes, I forgave you. No, I'm not bitter.
Right.
But I do have, and I had a problem with XYZ.
Yeah.
If I see XYZ, I'm going to adjust it.
Yeah.
So that we don't end up there again. I'm going to make sure GPS doesn't bring us back to the same location.
Right.
We got the steering wheel, and I'm going to do it with love, because I respect you and I value you, and you're an important person, and I may have interpreted everything that you wanted to do for me differently, and it came off wrong. And yes, maybe you're gaslighting me, or maybe I do have the wrong memory.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, those boundaries, just like the stripes on the road, give us a definition of how to drive in a safe, logical way. That doesn't mean that there won't be accidents.
Right.
But it does mean that I'm not out there 4x4ing while everybody else is sitting in the HOV lane.
Right. Well, and you have to remember that when you create boundaries and you come back into a relationship with somebody that you've had conflict with and pain with, it is a new relationship. Okay, so you have to remember you are creating something brand new.
Yeah.
Okay, so the relationship you had previously, it's gone. If you choose to forgive someone, you got to let it go. And something I see happen a lot is people say they forgive somebody, but they continue to punish them over and over again. Now, the truth is, nobody can live when they're constantly being punished. You can't thrive on that. You can't survive on that. And that is not fair. Even if they have wronged you, it is not fair to forgive them but continue to punish them.
It's a weird form of narcissism.
It really is. It's because you haven't truly found that inner peace of true forgiveness.
Right.
You still are angry. You're still holding on to that because you still want them to suffer.
Right.
And I see that a lot with people who still have unforgiveness in their heart. They're like, okay, fine, I forgive you, we can solve a relationship, but they don't create a new relationship. They still live in the old relationship and continue to punish the people that hurt them.
So they haven't moved from Johnny to Willie.
Right.
They've gone from Johnny to Johnny, but they still are living with the old Johnny.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't, in their minds, they see it as progression, right? They see it as progress. They're allowing you to interact with them more, or maybe you to interact, the parent to interact with their grandchildren or whatever, but you still keep them at an arm's length, like you're still scrutinizing them, and
That's powerful.
And I see that so much, and there's so much anger and bitterness and resentment, and having everything that happened with my mom this morning, and kind of thinking back over our life, where we were in the middle and where we are now, and the progression of that. And look, my mom and I aren't going to agree on everything. Sure. We still have moments where we disagree with each other, or we might get mad at each other, but she's my mom.
It's powerful.
She gave birth to me. She gave me life. And no matter how angry I want to be at her sometimes, I think about she gave me life. And
the most precious thing in the universe.
Having 3 children, the pain that we go through to give our children life, let me tell you, everybody needs to call their mom and say, I love you.
Because if dad's had to do it, it's over, baby.
There's nothing like that experience. And having experience and knowing what my mom went through to give me life, she deserves for me to say, it's okay.
Yeah.
I forgive you. You made some bad choices. You made some good choices along the way, and it's okay. I get it, So creating those boundaries help with that, and building a new relationship. You let go of the old one because it's gone, and you create a new one based on where you are now.
It's powerful.
Based on those boundaries that you have now, what you're comfortable with now. And you have to have those very clear so that way you don't break those boundaries with each other and end up back where you started. And
So good.
it's so important to remember that.
Well, and we talk about all the time, right? The pain that a person brings into a new relationship.
Yeah.
Right. We'll need to talk about this at some point for our dating world and
Right.
so forth. But we talk a lot of times about the baggage that we carry from relationship to relationship to relationship, and I'm blaming Sarah for what Anna did to me, and I blamed Anna for what Hannah did to me, right? But really, it was neither Hannah or Anna or whoever the person's name I made up. Right. They were all issues that were in me in the beginning, right? And so I love what you're saying, because for me, if you've failed me in the past or you broke my heart or whatever the situation was, right, and I choose to forgive you, and it's important to realize that if you choose to forgive someone, that does not mean necessarily that you choose to continue to walk on the same path with that person.
Right.
But if you do choose to walk on that same path, it's beautiful, because you can begin then to say, hey, the old is gone. I'm not going to judge you off the old, but I will remind you of a relationship that I once had with a gentleman by the name of Richard. And this is how that went. These are the signs that I'm seeing. And we're not going down that road.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go down that road, that's fine. Go down that road by yourself. But I've forgiven. I've washed my mind of blame and anger and so forth. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reestablish new boundaries for what this relationship in today's world looks like. That's so good.
And I think it's important to point out as well that there are toxic relationships out there.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say that this is the fix-all for everyone, because it's important to be able to recognize toxic relationships. And forgiveness isn't about the toxic people, right? It's about you being able to move on. But if this person is not willing to respect your boundaries, to rebuild a new relationship with you, then you have to move on.
If they don't treat you humanely,
right. If they're unwilling.
If we're talking about physical abuse or mental abuse or spiritual abuse, those things are yes, you can forgive them.
Sure.
I'm still not telling you to carry around that guilt in yourself and in your soul and so forth. But that's not a healthy relationship to rebuild off of.
Right.
Typically, those people are broken themselves that you're not. They're succubusing you.
Yeah.
They're energy thieves. What they're really doing is they're trying to fill the void in their life with the energy out of your life.
Right.
And you can never, no matter what degree of forgiveness you have to go through, and I encourage you to do that, you can never let a succubus suck the energy out of your life so that they can go to work the next day.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are times where you need to cut people out of your life, and that's okay, and that's a good thing, But if you have the capability to
let
repair,
them go, baby.
You let go of the toxic people because they're bad for you, for your life, for your health. Still forgive them, so you are free from them, but let them go.
Yeah. But
the people, the family members, the friends that want to have a relationship, create a healthy relationship with them.
Good.
And it takes both sides agreeing on the boundaries, coming together, saying, okay, this is where we are. Let's not go back here. Let's move forward to something more beautiful.
It's good.
And so now I can have a healthy relationship with my mom. I can let her be a grandma to my son, who loves her so much.
Yeah.
And
they're so precious.
All three of our kids love her so much, Logan, of course, is 9, so he's had more life with her. But they all fight over her attention when she gets to visit, and she's a good grandma. Yeah. I know she loves her grandbabies more than anything, all of her grandchildren, not just our children, but my nieces and nephews as well. And, so I can't hold against her the pain that I feel sometimes of things that happen from her as a mother against her being a grandma.
Because it's a new relationship.
And she's a new person.
Yeah.
She's not the same person she was years ago, and we often forget that people change, people grow.
And let them grow. Yeah.
You need to let them change and let them grow. And if you continue to remind them of their mistakes, of their past that affected you because you want to continue to punish them, they can never grow into a better person, into a person where they have more peace in their life, to be a better parent or a better grandparent or a better friend, depending on the situation. And, forgiveness is tough. And I'm not going to lie, it's one of the hardest things. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you from my own experience, it is actually easier to love and forgive than to hate. And it might seem like that's easier, but I promise you,
it takes a lot of energy.
It takes a lot of
energy and effort.
Energy
and the effort that but the media has to fuel it.
Yeah.
We have to have a president that's continuing to turn a blind eye on it. We have to have it continually thrust down our throats by politicians. Hate. Nonstop, and the energy that the world is wasting on hate right now, it's mind-boggling. Right?
Well, everything that's happened with Mom this morning really made me think not only about our relationship and the relationship with me and my family as a whole, but all these people who are isolated, have spent half a year in complete isolation. People are out mingling a little bit more right now, but people are still not spending time with everybody, their family, like they used to. And I think about all the people that have lost their lives and lost their loved ones. And I think to myself, how many of them had broken relationships with these people and they never got to heal them?
Can you share that? Because that's so powerful. Not only with your mom, you've had the opportunity to restore, but you also have a beautiful relationship with your brothers.
Right. So my older brother and I, we had rough childhoods, and something to remember that I really encourage people to remember is that when you're broken because you've suffered and you look to other people to lean on, to help you, we often forget that sometimes they're broken too, and that they've suffered too, and they don't know how to be that person for you, that person that you need.
Because they need that person.
Right.
Yeah.
And I look back at my life and I realize I kind of did that with my brother.
Sure.
Like I needed him to fill a role that was never his responsibility to fill.
Right.
I needed him to be something that he wasn't capable of being.
And he actually tried.
And he tried, and it wasn't his fault, And so he and I struggled a lot growing up, and we had our own demons that we were fighting and trauma that we were dealing with, and we dealt with it very differently. Mm-hmm. So we did not have a good relationship growing up. Honestly, I don't remember having many positive times with my older brother. And I will say we got to a point in our 20s where he started trying.
Yes.
He really...
It's crazy how far a good little old school try will go.
I will say he tried to make up for not always being the best brother, and
should honor that.
And there was a place, unfortunately it was at a time in my life where I was very angry, and I was very bitter, and I think at some point he just gave up because he thought, she's never going to change, she's never going to forgive me, she's never going to accept this, and wow. I will give my brother credit. He tried really hard to fix things, and I wouldn't let him.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I still wanted him to suffer for the pain that he had caused me. And that was unfair of me. Mm-hmm. And so then he got together with his now wife, and her and I, oh my gosh, let me tell you, we did not like each other. That was kind of an understatement. And people who see us now would never, ever know that, because she's my sister. And I love this woman more than life.
This is wonderful.
She's an amazing, amazing woman. But we did not start off that way at all.
Can you please confess what you wore to this woman's wedding?
Okay, so when my brother and my sister-in-law got married. So my sister-in-law did not want me at their wedding, which I don't blame her, because I didn't like her. And that's just the truth. And I remember when my brother told me they were getting married, and I was like, oh, that's not going to last.
And they have a beautiful relationship.
They do. Been married, they've been together, I think, like 15 years now, and 2 beautiful daughters. But I wore black to my brother's wedding because
this wretched woman wore
black.
black.
I did. I said I was going to a funeral. Yeah.
So let's jump to the good stuff.
So when I say I was not a nice person for a while, I was not a nice person for a while. But anger does that to a person, right?
It does. It
Bitterness,
ruins
it just seeps away at any goodness in your soul, and you just lash out at people.
Wears you out.
And what happens is you want to make people pay. You want to make them suffer for how you feel they have wronged you.
Wow.
So you justify your anger. It's justifiable. They hurt me, so of course I'm angry. They deserve everything that I say, everything that I do.
Yeah.
And it took many years, and like I said, I think at some point my brother just gave up and just kind of felt like, I tried. That's all I could do. My sister, she's not willing to change, to hear anything, to receive this, and I can't do anything more. She's just too angry. And I remember at one point when I was finally making peace with God about so many things in my life, and I realized that we were getting to an age where we were going to all start having children. And I thought to myself, I don't want to have children that look at me and say, why do you hate auntie and uncle, and why can't I see my cousins? Or I didn't want that divide and division in our family. I didn't want that to carry over into our children. And that was really important to me. And I thought, that's not what I want. That's not the life that I want for my children or my future nieces and nephews. And so I remember this so clearly. There was a moment where I had to learn real forgiveness. And it was the first time that I did it. And it started by, I created a little box. And even if you do not consider yourself a spiritual person or a religious person, I think that this can be something that anybody can really just hold on to and find some peace in this. But I created a box, and I wrote down the name of every person that I felt had hurt me, every person that I blamed for something. And I put their name in a box. And every night, I took their names out of a box, and one by one, I prayed for them.
Wow.
And I prayed.
And you could think of that in terms of gratitude,
right,
or Thanksgiving, yeah.
Right. So however you want to process this, however this works for you, but this is what I did. So every night I prayed for something good for them. Something good that they would receive in their life. And it wasn't easy at first, and it took me a while to be able to do it, but every night I faithfully did this. Gosh. And it started the process of learning to forgive and wanting good things for people that have hurt you and not wanting them to suffer.
So powerful.
And you get to a place where I didn't need to pull those names out anymore. It got to a place where I actually felt genuine about wanting good things in my lives.
The box isn't what was holding you accountable. Right. Your heart was.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I remember one night I was thinking about my brother and sister-in-law, and so I wrote each of them a letter. And I was living in a different state at the time. And to each of them, I basically apologized. Because one thing I realized, and I want you guys who are listening to really think about this in your own lives, is when we are hurting and we've been hurt by people and we're in those angry places, we forget the stuff that we do that hurts them.
Yeah.
And we don't ever hold ourselves accountable because we feel justified in how we're acting. But at some point, you have to take accountability for your own actions and for the pain that you cause in other people's lives, because it's not okay.
Yeah.
It's a chain reaction that keeps going and going, and at some point you have to stop the domino effect. And so you have to hold yourself accountable, because it's not okay to treat people badly. It's not okay to be angry at everybody and blame them all the time. And it's not their fault for everything. At some point you have to be responsible and realize that some of this is my fault.
Right.
And so I remember writing these letters, and I remember just asking for forgiveness. And, I remember telling them, I don't even know why we hate each other anymore. I don't even remember the moment we got angry with one another. I don't even remember what we fought over. And I just remember telling them that I was so sorry for everything that I had ever done that had hurt them. and that I asked their forgiveness. And I said, if they never felt that they had to ask for forgiveness from me, that was okay. But I wanted them to know that I forgave them.
It's powerful.
And that I love them. And that I wanted them to know that I wanted a life and a relationship with them.
It's powerful.
And I mailed these letters. Now I can imagine probably their faces when they got these. It's probably something that they never thought they would ever see. And it was a moment that I think they never expected to happen. But don't give up on people. Really don't give up on them. If you love them and they are worth something to you, don't give up on them. Because sometimes people have to go through a process, and they have to go through their own pain. They have to separate themselves, and they have to find themselves, and they've got to be able to sort through their trauma and their emotions.
So good.
And find themselves. Mm-hmm. And that is when I learned that it was easier to love and forgive than to be angry. Powerful. And I felt this huge weight just lifted off of me. And everything changed. Everything changed. And it was the start of a new beginning for all of us. And it built into an amazing relationship that I have now with both my brother and my sister-in-law and my nieces who I love. And it truly is a beautiful thing.
So powerful. This is a episode that is a blessing, right? Yeah. Before your final thoughts, what was shared on one of our comments not long ago was a young lady heard your testimony or her story about abuse that you went through. Said that at one point of it she cried significantly hearing your story. Only cried once as hard as that. I assume it was in relationship to her experience. Mm-hmm. Tragically, things can scar us and hurt us so bad that it overwhelms us and it sends us into a death spiral. But this girl, I was so proud of her. She said she did something very similar to what you did with your brothers. Mm-hmm. And she wrote down all the things that had been hurt, that she'd been hurt by. And it was such a blessing because I read this wonderful testament. And she went to a gym. Mm-hmm. She joined that gym. Yeah. And she left her cards that she wrote, all the offenses and everything that had been done in the gym.
In the trash, yeah.
In the trash.
Yep.
And I think that could be a powerful step for each one of you. As I listened to Tiffany share and as I shared my stories of keeping your head on a swivel and being aware of just how precious this life is.
So precious.
Memento mori. Death is always with us.
Yeah. And
we shouldn't live in fear of that. We shouldn't live in pain of that. But before you share your final thoughts for the night or the day, whatever your time you're watching it, I want to encourage you, please subscribe to our channel.
Please, yeah.
We love talking and teaching and training. We also love our interview series, which has been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
We hope you'll tune into those and take them in bits and parts, or just sit down and say, you know what, this is a good opportunity for me to grow. They are growth-based. You will find nuggets that will help you grow your life. So please do subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and just share your feelings and your emotions based on this episode. Tiffany, before we finish, are there any final thoughts that you really have?
You know, as we've been saying today, life is precious, and getting that that text this morning about my mom just put so many things into perspective, that even though her and I are in a good place, not everybody is. And with everything going on with COVID and just the chaos that is in our world right now, I just really encourage you that if there is somebody in your life that you have unforgiveness with, unresolved issues with, that there's that pain, that hurt, that you haven't been able to just wrap yourself around to build something new from it, I just really encourage you to find a place of serenity for yourself, to process that, to forgive, because forgiveness is about setting yourself free. Don't let these chains weigh you down any longer. You deserve to live in joy and peace, and you deserve to be free. And I can't encourage you enough to forgive and let things go and heal those relationships, because the truth is family is everything. Whether it's blood or family that you choose to make your family, without them, we're alone, and nobody should be alone. And remember, we all make mistakes. And for a second, put yourself in their shoes. Seek to understand where they came from and the decisions that they made, and realize that they're only human too. And they had to live with those decisions as well. And I guarantee that they had pain from them too. So I just want to say, remember, it is easier to love and forgive than to hate. And let's heal those bonds, those wounds that have been severed, and learn again what it's like to have a family, to have that connection, that unity with your friends or your family, people that mean something to you. And don't be afraid to reach out. And you know what? It's hard. And I'm not going to lie. It's really hard. But I promise you that when you take that first step and you become that bigger person and say, I don't care what they did. I don't care if they don't think they ever did anything wrong. I choose to forgive them. I choose to love them. And I promise you it will set you free.
Everybody, I'm Richard Thomas, and this is...
I'm Tiffany Thomas.
So glad you were with us today. Bless you, and I hope that you will tune in again. Subscribe down below. God bless you.